said, I got to talk. I got to tell what I feel. I got to talk about my life as I see it.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Built for Anything podcast. I am your host, Hertz, and I got a really, really good podcast lined up for you guys. Here are the topics. First, we're going to talk about Ray Lewis' comments to Odell Beckham Jr., in which he said Odell has removed God from his life. We're definitely going to talk about that and the bigger meaning behind that. And also, we're going to talk about couples who move in together prior to getting married and whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. Yeah, you definitely want to hear what I got to say about that. Now, before I get into it, I'm just going to go over my usual disclaimers, because if you're a first-time listener, I need you to know this is an explicit podcast. I pull no punches. I say what's on my mind. And so there will be cursing involved. Nothing too crazy. I try not to, it's not going to be too ratchet or nothing like that. But just so you are aware. Also, the opinions that I mention here are of my observation, and these are opinions of my own. And if you disagree, I don't mean to offend you, but it is what it is. So let's get started. Now, Odell Beckham Jr., for those of you out there who are not aware, he's a star wide receiver for the New York Giants. Number 13. We all know the catch that he got back in Dallas a few years back that basically was his claim to fame, and he's just been tearing up the league left and right with amazing catches. Now, I'm a native New Yorker, so, obviously I'm a little bit biased to what the Giants do. But obviously he's been in the news too for a couple of the wrong reasons. Now, he was in the news. He was being recorded. He was in a hotel room, had a nice little blonde thing next to him, nice little blonde woman. And, there was some pizza there, a blunt in his hand, it looks like, allegedly, and some powdered substance somewhere in the room that I guess could pass off as cocaine, allegedly. Okay. And so he's been in the news for, recently for some terrible things. But prior to that, Odell Beckham Jr., compared to what a lot of these guys get in trouble for, domestic violence and drunk driving and all kinds of madness that football players do, I would say this is relatively not a big deal. But, he definitely got to do better as far as his circle. He got to make sure that he has the right people around him, because things like this is going to happen. So fast forward, you have Ray Lewis, who I guess was asked about Odell Beckham Jr. recently, and he made a couple of statements. So I'm going to read out a couple of statements and give you guys some of my feedback. Now, Ray Lewis is a retired Hall of Fame linebacker. Used to play for the Ravens. Okay. And so here's the comments that he said. He said, "Where there's no God, there's chaos." I agree with him on that. I totally agree with him. When you don't have any type of spiritual guidance in your life, then you are in trouble, because it's hard to put faith in people, because people naturally are flawed. We all are. And so therefore, you're prone to be let down, and you need to be able to have a strong relationship with the Most High. Now, what's interesting about this story is the comments that he made. I've noticed watching Sports Center and Fox Sports 1 that it forced them to have to talk about religion to a degree and make reference to God. And it was interesting to see some of these sportscasters, are so quick to say that, they're either agnostic or atheist. And for those of you out there, as far as being agnostic is somebody who believes that nothing is known or can be known of an existence of God. So this is somebody who, doesn't believe in the Most High simply because there hasn't been, I guess, enough proof to them. Okay, so they're not denying it, nor they're going along with it. right? So I guess they're kind of in the middle. But then you have people who are atheists and they just don't believe in any gods at all. Okay, so I just wanted to shed some light around that. And Ray Lewis is obviously a God-fearing man, allegedly. I mean, you never know what these people do behind closed doors, but he puts himself out there as someone who is big into the Lord and, is trying to spread positivity and trying to spread the message. And he's done a lot of things for his community. I take nothing away from him. And so his comments has some weight to it. So let's continue. He goes on to say Odell has removed God from his life. Now, here's why I don't have a problem with his comments. The reason why I don't have a problem with it is because he clearly has a relationship with Odell Beckham Jr. Odell Beckham Jr. reached out to him. Maybe he's taken on a mentorship role to him. And so I feel like if he says that this is things that he's mentioned to Odell in private, in person, then, hey, for him to mention it to us, to the general public, he has every right to. You see, because here's the problem, right? You get a lot of people out there who will make comments and not even attempt to speak to the person, but yet claim that they have such a good relationship. And so I don't know about you guys, but I see it even in just our regular lives, right? Let alone athletes and entertainers, but our regular lives where sometimes you might have a relationship with somebody, maybe something happened. Rather than them communicating with you what it is that was wrong or rub them the wrong way, they much rather, talk behind your back or complain to others and not even give you the decency of having a conversation with you. So that's pretty rampant. And so for him to make these comments and know that he's had conversations with Odell and he's seen some of the things that's happening around him, then to be honest, again, hey, he has the right to say so because he's seeing it from a first person point of view. And so let's continue. Now, he made these comments a few days ago, but he was asked whether he wanted to clarify those comments. And this was his response. He said, no, there's no clarification. I'm never clarifying when it comes to when I'm talking about God. And I want to talk about this for a quick second because a lot of times people will ask you to clarify things, and it's not because they really want to have true understanding, but a lot of times people just want you to talk to see if they could find something incorrect about what you're saying, so that way they can nitpick on that because your initial statement or your initial argument, they really didn't have anything good to go up against. So you got to be very, very careful about that. That's why sometimes I find, when I'll have conversations with people and I mention something that I figure, well, I guess it kind of went over their head or just something that just kind of blows their mind, that I would expect most people, if you hear some sort of information, you should, that's totally like different from anything that you've heard. You should do your due diligence to research that, right? To gather up some data. But you find that most people, they're too lazy to even do that. And so what'll happen is, rather than them trying to actually do research for themselves, they'll try to put you on the spot to convince them. And you got to understand that if true information, true knowledge, it takes time, it takes study, and people want the short version of it and not want to have to go through the bits and pieces. And so I'll give you a quick example. You had Easter that passed just a couple of weeks ago, and I don't observe Easter because I observe the scriptures, and there's nothing in the scriptures that pertains to Easter. And so when you have a lot of people running around saying happy Easter and left and right, I just let it be. I grew up Catholic, and so these were holidays that I used to observe. But as I got older and I've done research and got into the knowledge, I've learned to make decisions for myself based on the information and things that I know. And so what'll happen sometimes is that, when you try to express even just a little bit to someone, and that's information that's like, whoa, like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean you don't, it's Easter. Like, what are you reading? People ask you things like, well, what kind of Bible are you reading? and, when I'll say things like, well, I just follow the scriptures. It's like, well, what scriptures? And I'm like, dude, the Bible. But you find that there's a lot of people who don't even really truly understand the Bible, and they don't study the Bible, because the Bible is a historical book and there's a lot of information in there, and you have to treat it as such. Like you got to study it. It's not enough to just read it from front to back and say, oh, well, I read it. You got to really study it. You got to comprehend it. You got to really dig deep into it and do further research, just like you would with anything else that's historic. And so I definitely understand what he means by this, where it's like we've sometimes you got to come to a point where it's like, look, I ain't trying to convince you of nothing. I'm not on trial here to try to refute, the things that you say. I know what I know because of the things that I've researched. Now, if you know better, or if you know a better way, then please do explain that to me. And therefore I can try to, I can take that in consideration. But a lot of times you find that most people, they're just full of shit. And so sometimes you just gotta leave things unsaid and just kind of know who you're dealing with, and just, understand that sometimes everybody that you meet is just not going to be on your level of thinking. And so let's continue on. He continues to say that, and this is Ray Lewis, he says, we confuse so much. People try to take comments and they try to twist them. I am more invested in this young man than anybody who's talking about him. Ask OBJ himself how many phone calls we've had since his rookie year. Now, when I first heard about this story and the dynamics of the relationship that Ray Lewis is alluding to, it had me thinking to myself, like, where's OBJ's father? Where's his father in his life? Because with all due respect to what Ray is saying, I understand that it's good to have mentors and you've kind of taken them under your wing. But Odell Beckham Jr., if his father's still alive, that's supposed to be his father's role to instill certain principles in him. And I said to myself, you know what? I know I've heard about Odell Beckham Jr.'s mom over and over. I said, I really didn't hear about Senior. And so I did a quick Google about him. And what pops up immediately about Odell Beckham Sr., what pops up immediately is the fact that he got arrested on gun and weed charges. And this looks like back in 2017. And then another thing pops up about him using his son's name to seduce a Instagram model, whatever that's about. And so obviously nothing positive pops up when you pull up his father. And so it's pretty clear to me that there was obviously a void there, where sometimes that happens, where if you don't really have a good father figure in your life, you tend to seek that elsewhere. And that's the problem in a lot of communities, and that's in families in general. Without that father figure, there's so much that's supposed to be taught to you that it's just not taught to you. And sometimes you could even have a father around and not really be around. So you got a lot of fathers who's like, well, I was in the house, or, I paid the bills, but they don't understand that, there's a certain level of guidance that you're supposed to have to your kids, and they don't do that part. And so what happens is your kids, they get older and they go through life just trials and tribulations, and you hope that they find the information that they should have gotten years prior on their own. And it's just unfortunate. And so obviously you have Odell Beckham Jr., who's, clearly a huge star. Without that type of guidance instilled in him, he's going to make these kind of mistakes, these lapse of judgment in terms of the people around him. And so I'll use an example on the flip side. For example, a Kyrie Irving, who constantly talks about his father, who lost his mother at a young age. But he always talks about how his father played such a role to him, and he credits his father so much. And when you look at the way Kyrie Irving carries himself, there's a level of maturity there. And I think when you have a father figure around you, then there is, as a man, there's going to be that level of maturity there, that level of guidance. and it's going to show in how you carry yourself. So clearly Odell Beckham Jr. doesn't have this in his life, and he's not alone. And so that's why brothers out there got to understand that it's not enough to just pay child support. It's not enough. Like you really have to try to make a concerted effort, especially today where you have a lot of bullshit going on, where kids are turning to television, loving hip hop and rappers and all these other people and trying to mimic them because there's such a void that, that's why you got a lot of brothers out here with a lot of these feminine ways. And so definitely, I could definitely understand, why Ray is going at him like this. This is probably out of frustration. He's probably had several conversations with Odell about, the conduct and some of the things that Ray has gone through, and try to, steer him away from that. And when you see somebody is just not heeding your advice, then at some point, sometimes you got to give them that tough love. And I feel like this is coming from at least a good place. It's not from a negative place. But hey, sometimes I think you got to go public just to put that spotlight on that person. So let's continue. Let's see what else was in here. So he says, it bothers me so much because so many people say they know so much about him. Have never had one phone call, right? I talk to this kid as my child. Okay, so, talk to this kid as my child. Like I said, obviously he felt like the relationship with him, it's different from a big brother, little brother type of thing. He felt like he filled a father figure role. And after looking up Odell's father, I could see where that could have been the case. Now let's go a little further down. And he says this. He says, let me just make sure I'm clear with this. I don't live to be liked. This is Ray Lewis who said that. And I totally agree with him there. If you're listening to this, you got to understand something. The truth can put a part between a lot of people in your life. Okay, here's what I mean. The truth can cause separation, and a lie just sounds a lot sweeter to people than the truth does. And so a lot of times you have people who contradict themselves or they're conflicted because they don't want to really say the way things are to someone because they're afraid that person will dislike what it is that they say, and they may lose their relationship with that person. Now, I could tell you from firsthand experience that's the truth. Sometimes if you're vocal about something, or there's just a belief that you have that's different from those around you, it will alienate people from you because people will look at you as someone who is just different, and people don't do well with different. They do well with people who are like-minded, who think like them. And so you always hear the saying, iron sharpens iron, but sometimes people don't want to be sharpened. They just want to be dull. Like they don't want to be challenged in any way, shape, or form. They just want to be around people who share the same views and they're comfortable with that. So you have to understand that if you are vocal about something, you're not going to be liked. Most of the times you're not going to be liked for saying the things that is on your mind. And this doesn't mean that you just regurgitate, nonsense, but you could be saying things that you have facts behind. And most people do not have facts around the things that they say. And they, rather than them being proven wrong, they rather just not deal with you. You see what I'm saying? Like they just rather not even deal with you because they can't fathom, like, why is this person being around me right now and thinking this way makes me uncomfortable. Like this is how a lot of people feel. So for Ray to have that mentality, I think that's a mentality that a lot of people should have. Now he goes on to say, my way in life will never change. My why, I do what I do because I'm trying to bring more souls back to Christ. That's lost. We are lost. We got schools being shot up. We got churches being shot up. This is a different call, gentlemen. And everybody wants to fight these nitpicking things. There's a bigger fight we have to reintroduce God back to our communities. That's a lot there. Let's continue. Everybody's going to find themselves going through something, but don't ever let nobody put you back there. Your resume speaks for yourself. Check my resume since then. Now, what Ray Lewis is talking about is that obviously he has a past, and I noticed a lot of people on Twitter and social media after hearing this kind of, wanted to attack Ray Lewis, and you got people saying, don't force your beliefs on him and on us. And I always laugh when I hear people say things like that. Don't force your beliefs on me. What people got to understand is every single day, you're being fucking brainwashed. Like every single day, somebody's forcing an agenda upon you. From the moment you were born, your parents was forcing an agenda upon you. And then you got older and you watched TV. You went to school and you got indoctrinated to this lifestyle that they call quote unquote the norm. And so you it's not until you start to mature and you start to seek out your own information can you truly identify who you are. Because up until that point, you are who the people around you made you to be. So as far as don't tell me what to do, or people every single day through music, through television, through ads, through movies, I mean, everywhere you turn, you're being told how to think. And that's just the truth. There's programs out there. CIA has talked about it. FBI has talked about it. Like this is all, different forms of mind control. So you got to understand again that that's the only way you're really going to break out of that again is if you really start to do research on everything around you. Only then can you really truly open your mind and really see what is going on around you. All right. So I definitely understand where he's coming from with that. And as far as his past, he was in a situation where I think he left a nightclub and somebody got shot, and I believe the person died. And so he was brought in as a witness. And so, he didn't want to snitch, and, people bring that up. And so he's talking about that, and people try to bring that up. Anytime he does anything, they did the same thing with the Colin Kaepernick situation. When Ray Lewis talked about Colin Kaepernick and how, he was this close to getting him a job with the Ravens, but then his, Colin Kaepernick's girlfriend, fiance, whoever she is, Ness Nitty, she posted on social media, basically, trolling them and calling the owner a racist. And so right then and there, that just kind of closed the doors on Colin Kaepernick getting any type of job. So even then, people started to try to bring up the past to Ray Lewis as well. But I do commend him for acknowledging the fact that, hey, whatever happened. And, he's done everything in his power from since then to be a better person. And I believe that there's nothing wrong with that. Things happen in life, trials and tribulations. You have to be able to bounce back, and you shouldn't allow other people to try to remind you of those things that you did wrong 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when you are being an entirely different person. A lot of times people will bring up the past just to try to keep you there. And so you have to really be mindful and also you have to be at peace with the things that happen and understand why they happen. And if you have a bigger purpose for your life, you're not going to allow people to bring you down on that. So as far as, to Odell Beckham Jr., I do believe that he do need to have some sort of guidance in his life. Touring around with Drake and this rapper and that rapper, he's gotten a lot of publicity, a lot of fame without winning a Super Bowl. And so you could only imagine if he were to win a Super Bowl, he would lose his mind. And this is another reason why, he's looking for some money from the Giants, and he's having a tough time getting it, because if you're willing to act like this and I didn't even pay you yet, God, I mean, once I give you this money, what's keeping you from just really acting a fool? So he has to understand how he's being perceived. He has to understand there's a lot of kids who look up to him. I mean, for God's sakes, that haircut he got with the blonde hair and that cut, I seen plenty of little kids. Even out here, you see plenty of little kids with that haircut. So he's definitely influential to this generation. So I think he really needs to, consider that, when he has his options. So, he wants to be great. I think he's a tremendous talent, but he has to understand that, things like this, it could be detrimental to you. He has to make sure he has the right people in his circle. So definitely agree with Ray when it comes to that. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Let's move on to the very next topic. And let's talk about this. Now, this is an interesting one. Now, I constantly hear from people who move in with someone, significant other. They're not married. And the whole shit just blows up, right? Like there's just, it seems all good at first. Usually, one person has more of a foot in the relationship than the other. And before you know it, the whole situation just explodes. And so I remember I had a conversation recently with someone, and they were telling me about how, he was dating a woman. She had her own place. He had his own place. And so he would go over to her most of the time. And whenever they'll have arguments, she would just kick him out. Like, you got to go. She would kick him out all the time and break up with him like all the time. And so for me, I remember when he was telling me this, I'm like, why would you even go back? The first time she did that, you should have just been like, peace. Like, you should be fortunate enough to have your own place, because they were actually thinking of getting a place together, a house together. And I'm saying to him that, could you imagine if you had a house together with this person? And so it had me thinking, right? I wonder, what is the statistics of people who live together prior to marriage? What are some of the advantages, the pros and the cons? Because some people say that they have a rule. They will never, marry someone without living with them, because they feel like if you live with the person, this is the only way to know that person, right? So I wanted to get into that. Now, here's my thoughts on this before I get into this article that I found online that I'm going to share with you guys. I'm going to just give you guys my general overview. My general view is this: if you want to get married to someone, then you should not live with that person prior to getting married to them. You should have your own place. That person should have their own place. And if you're just trying things out, maybe, you guys can get a place together. And if you're a man, if you can still maintain your own place and live with that woman, that'll be great, at least in the beginning. Because I don't believe that it takes living with the person to know them. I think it just simply takes time. It just simply takes time. And you never truly know a person, because a person can change, especially a woman. She can change. It takes a long time before you really, really know someone. In order for a relationship to work, you have to be willing to accept the person for who they are if they never changed. What do I mean by that? What I'm saying is, a lot of times people will get together and they'll find flaws and they'll say to themselves, well, I could change this about this person. And what you got to understand is, what if that person never changes that habit? And so you have to be able to live with the outcome. So it's better that you find someone that you could live with their pros and cons, their good and bad habits. And what happens is, over time, you hope that that person can become a better person. But if you think that it's going to take you to change someone who's been a certain way for 30 years of their life or 20 years of their life or however old they are, that you're going to change that person in a month or two or a year or two, you're mistaken. It has to be up to that person, which is why I feel when I meet a woman, she got to come, already ready, like no assembly required. Like this person, it shouldn't have to be me. I have to work you, I have to fix you. No, I need you to come strong. I need to come strong, and we need to do strong things together. But when you bring on broken people and you're trying to fix them all the time, and you taking this approach of like, Captain Save-A-Ho or whatever, you got to understand that that's just bound to fail. Okay. So again, the way I look at it is if you are thinking of getting married, you should not look to live with that person, because it's like going into business with somebody when they don't have anything invested. It's hard to maintain a household with somebody who is not really, really committed. And that's on both sides where there's no commitment. If you want to test anything out, you have your own place. She has her own place. Maybe you go by her every now and then. She comes by you every now and then. But you don't move in together until there is some sort of a commitment there, meaning whether you're engaged or married, something, there's something substantial there. Because outside of that, I just feel like you're just playing around. And when you're playing around in today's society, people get bored. And when they get bored, people just abandon the relationship. Nobody knows how to really talk it out and have great communication. Like, people don't work on those kind of things. So you just have to be really, really mindful of that. So let's get into this article. Now, I found this article online, and they were talking about some of the pros and cons. So I'm going to pick out some of the things and give some feedback on it. Now, I'm going to start with the pros. So the pros of living together prior to marriage is that it says that you learn each other's habits. Now, I guess, if you're around somebody for a long time, I guess you'll pick up some habits. But like I said, you'll never truly know someone until they died, because while a person is alive, they can change. They can be somebody else. They can do something else. So old habits are hard to break, yes, but people can change. So I don't know about that one. The next thing they mention is that it can make or break your relationship. I would say so, because obviously you're going to learn more about the person. But again, I don't feel like it's because you live with them. I think if you just simply pay attention to someone, then you can pick up on certain things. You don't need to be with somebody for 5 years to realize that they're an asshole. You really don't. Because most times when people do wrong things to you, they've given you signs prior. You just chose to ignore it because, if you're a guy, it's because her ass was fat, because the head was good or whatever it is. If you're a female, you ignore certain things about him because the dick is good. We just ignore certain characteristics because early on, everything is fresh, everything is new. And so you don't really know what characteristics to look for in an individual. So can it make or break your relationship? Yeah. If you're not paying, if you haven't been paying attention prior, then maybe you'll pay attention now. So the next thing, it says you get to split the chores. Whatever. Obviously splitting responsibilities. You do get to see how somebody acts. Sometimes you see people who have roommates and they always talk about this person doesn't clean up after themselves. You start to really, see things where, you want to buy this type of furniture and that person's supposed to buy that kind of furniture, but they don't hold up on their end. And so, you do find out about a person in terms of how they handle responsibilities. So yes, obviously, but is that a pro? Again, these are things that you can find out without having to live with someone. The next thing, it makes sense financially. Now, this is the one that I really want to talk about too, because what you'll find nowadays is that sometimes people will live with, a woman will live with a man or a man will live with a woman simply because out of necessity. The fact that they can't maintain their own home, it's just a lot easier for them to move in with someone else, split the responsibilities, or not, or, some cases you'll find where they don't offer anything at all. They just, they're there. And so they're just living off. And so you'll find where people will be quick to live with you because of their own personal circumstances, not necessarily because they want to be with you or they're trying to see where this goes. But sometimes it's just because, I can't hold up my living arrangements. Maybe you live closer to a job that I'm looking to get to. It'll be easier for me in terms of travel. Like there has to be something in it for them most of the time. And so you got to be really, really careful when you open up your home to someone in terms of their true intentions. And so that's why I say you got to make sure that you have that person has something to lose as well. And a lot of times when you just let people move in like that, they take a lot of things for granted. So as far as financially, yeah, it could make sense financially. You know, if you're able to lay up in that home and do whatever the fuck you want. Yeah, and guys too. I'm not just picking on the women. I'm saying guys too. If you just find you a woman where you could just lay up on the couch and play video games all damn day or smoke weed or do nothing, and she just comes home and it's whatever. And women will do that. They'll just keep a man around just for that. Then again, it makes sense for him financially. Doesn't make sense for her. So, you know, that's what I got to say about that. Now, let's get into some of these cons. Now, here it is. Less likely to get married. Now, the studies show that 50% of people who move in together actually end up getting married. I feel like that number is a little bit too low because 50%, nah. I think that number's pretty high now. See, here's the thing. It's the classic why buy the cow when you can drink the milk for free, right? And again, it goes both ways. When you get married, there is a certain level of accountability on both sides now, right? And it makes each other comfortable. It's like going into business and when you have a contract between each other, because sometimes a handshake isn't good enough. You shake somebody's hand, you say, hey, all right, I'm going to do this, you do that. That person just doesn't do it. You go to court. Some places might consider a handshake to be binding. Some places say, hey, you should have got it in writing. That's what marriage is today. It's getting it in writing. Okay. And when you look at it today, marriage really just benefits the state and the government, because it's another way for them to keep their hands in your pockets. And so you got to be really, really careful of marriage today and who you get married to. But the reason why I'm saying that this study, the numbers should be a lot higher, is because what happens today is that people don't really value marriage the way that they used to anyway. So living together, receiving all the benefits, you know, all the ass, and even that after a while, you know, you're not even having sex anymore. All the benefits, you know, she's cooking for you. You got somebody, you know, you come home to, you have some sort of companionship. You know, you didn't have to go through the court system. Like, for a lot of people, when they're unsure about that person, again, because of prior things that have gone on, then living together is simply a way to buy time. Okay? Because the proper way is that you're supposed to go from your parents' home. You know, you've been dating or courting this woman, and you go straight from your parents' home into marriage, right? But hopefully you have some time to mature as a man, and the woman is not really supposed to leave her family until she finds, you know, someone to get married to. That's the ideal situation, right? But that doesn't happen nowadays. Everyone's quick to leave their home for a number of reasons: peer pressure, relationship pressure, or, you know, just wanting to be an adult or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So less likely to get married. Yeah, that's a definite con, which is why I say if you value marriage, you probably should try to hold off on actually living together, okay, before doing that. Next con, you miss out on the newlywed feeling. Now, this is true. This makes a lot of sense, because a lot of times you hear people who, you know, they live together, they have a kid already, and then when they finally get married, it's like nothing changed, because you've been playing the role this entire time. So you took all the fun out of everything. Now it's just a formality. Now imagine, right? You finally, the first time you're moving in together is the very time that you're getting married together. And so now you have not only the fact that you're living together and you get to see this person all the time now, but now you're married. So now you feel, you know, this is a new thing for both of you. And then, you know, you bring kids along the way after you've been able to travel and do a lot of fun things as a married couple, as a newlyweds, then you bring kids into the equation, things just go a lot smoother because now you can plan. It shows that you've been able to plan. You were able to plan out an engagement. You were able to plan out, a wedding if you had a wedding, or just, getting married or buying a home. Like, you were able to show that you guys can work together before you brought a child into the equation. Because when you do it in reverse, you have a lot of people nowadays who just, they're knocking up chicks left and right, and with no true intentions on marrying that person or being with that person long term, the child suffers from it. It's just the child suffers from it. And then a lot of times the man is going to suffer too, because the woman's going to put you right through the ringer and put you through the court system, and you're not going to like it. And so that just creates a terrible dynamic between the man and the woman, in which the man takes it out on the child by not truly being there for that child. So there's just a lot of negative things that can happen when you do it in reverse. So I do agree with this as far as a con. I think this is one of the bigger cons if, again, marriage is something that you subscribe to. Now, the next thing it says is no real commitment. Totally agree with this, because this is what I said before. There is no real commitment. And when there's no real commitment in anything you do in life, okay, if there's no obligation, if there's nothing that is keeping you there, if you didn't have to work for it, you're not going to appreciate it as much. And so if you go into business with someone and you're all in and they're not, but they show up every single day and they call themselves the partner to the business, but they're not invested, it's going to piss you off. You're going to say, wait, hold up. You got 1% and I got 99%, and you coming in here and you telling me what to do? Hell no. You treat them like a minority owner, and minority owners have to stand to the side. Okay. If you truly want to be a part of this business, you gotta put something up. And so, because that's really what marriage is nowadays. It's a contract. It's a business. It doesn't carry the same weight it used to carry. And so as far as a commitment, people don't know how to do things without some sort of a commitment nowadays. Right. And so I totally agree with this. There's no real commitment when you live together. And a lot of times, again, you have men that will live with a woman who they don't intend on marrying at all. But again, they just keep them around, for sexual pleasures or other things. And you have women that'll just stick around a guy because maybe he spends money on her, but she knows truly that that's not who she wants to be with long term. She has other men or other things that she got going on, and she's just waiting for the right time. So you have a lot of people that are just, it looks good on the outside, but on the inside it's just, there's so much turmoil going on, and they don't know how to coexist anymore, because again, it goes back to the upbringing. All right. When you don't grow up in a household, in a loving relationship, a functional relationship, you repeat the dynamics when you have your own relationship. Okay. And this is most of the time, I'm not speaking for everybody or all cases, but there's a high probability that you're going to repeat a lot of the dysfunction that you've been around. And so if there was no real commitment that was made to your mom, then obviously when you leave, you're gonna say to yourself, well, I don't need to make a commitment to this other woman. So it's a trickle down effect that we have to try to break. And that's why, I'm making this podcast and this specific topic just to get people to open up their eyes. If you're in a young relationship, you focus on your purpose, focus on your relationship with the Most High, focus on your goals, because a significant other, a woman, the right person is going to come into your life at the right time. And you need to be mindful enough to recognize who that person is. And you only will know that through you being fulfilled as an individual, because you shouldn't want to be with somebody just to make yourself happy. Okay. You should already be happy. They should already be happy. And together you guys can make each other happier. Right. But there's a lot of people who are lost that are trying to find themselves in other people. And they think moving in together and just always having someone around them because they truly just don't want to be alone, then that's just a terrible way to do it. All right. So that's all I got to say about that. Thank you guys for listening. If you are not subscribed, please do consider subscribing. You will find this podcast on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, as well as YouTube, at Built for Anything. Thank you guys for listening. Peace and love, y'all. I'll catch y'all on the next episode. Peace.